Hey, how's it going? Today we're going to go over some more of ECX's Flavor Express line. I have some fruitier stuff today. I have their sweet grape, their sweet orange, their passion fruit, and their guava. So, standard disclaimer applies here. I did not pay for these. Shout out to ECX for sending them to me. We'll be starting off with their sweet grape. They describe this as a candy grape on the ECX website, and to be honest, I'm not really getting that. I do think there is maybe a little bit of like a sweeter, flat, hard candy grape in there. But primarily what I get is like white grape. And white grape kind of starts out with that sort of like lychee kind of taste. And then generally it starts to like pick up some greener tartar notes, and I feel like this is exactly what's going on here. You know, I get that lychee, that sweet lychee, like right up front, and then I start to pick up some like white grape or green grape style like tannic astringency from the peels. Um, Overall, you know, I wouldn't say it's like a particularly green or like rhubarb esque kind of flavor, but I think it sort of fits in that same family where you actually have that astringency sort of countering a lot of that sweetness. The mouthfeel here is actually pretty juicy too. And so when you combine sort of those greener tart notes, the lychee sweetness and the juiciness, it really just makes me think of Japanese aloe drinks. You know, that's like the most accessible flavor reference I can think of, which means there's probably something deeply wrong with me. I'm digging the juicier texture here. You know, I really do like that. This actually works pretty well as a white grape flavor too. A lot of the white grapes are kind of sketchy. Like if you look at Flavor Arts white grape, it basically tastes like hairspray and it's like kind of sticky. This actually feels a little bit more like a white grape juice, maybe just a little bit tartar than something you'd see like filling out a kid's juice box or something, but it actually kind of feels like a white grape juice without anything like too off or bizarre there. And sort of fitting with that white grape juice, this isn't, even though I do get like a little bit of that candy grape kind of flatter flavor to it, it's not really candy sweet overall. You know, it's definitely sweet. I'd say it's more of like a sweet and fruit juice blend kind of sweet as opposed to like just straight hard candy. So in terms of where you'd actually want to use this, you could use it at like a lower accent percentage around like 2% maybe behind other fruits, like more bright aggressive fruits, to kind of juice them up a little bit to give you a little bit more of like that juicy juice vibe if you want. The tartness here is going to work fairly well with most things. You know, I'd say brighter berries and stuff like that, but I'm a sucker for brighter berries. It goes actually really well with like apple and pear and that kind of family of fruits too, especially if they're already a little bit juicy, if you want something like crazy juicy. But if you want to take advantage of some of those like greener notes, you could definitely crank this up. This vape's perfectly fine at 4%. It just sort of moves closer to that tart aloe drink kind of profile. And so, you know, with that, you'd probably want to pair it with sort of other weirdish things if you wanted to actually play up that tart aspect. I think it's fairly refreshing. It'd go well with like cactus or cucumber or even some citruses or something like that. But yeah, overall, pretty solid white grape flavor. Doesn't really do what the description says though. So next I have their sweet orange. So this one's a little bit hard to nail down. I think on balance, I'd probably call it closer to a mandarin or tangerine flavor than like a more traditional orange flavor. You know, you're kind of splitting hairs when you start breaking apart the differences between those two. But in general, I associate those like mandarin flavors with being a little bit brighter and less bitter than the oranges. And this definitely fits that bill. So I do get like a nice, very bright orange citrus tartness off the top of this. It does have like some candy sweetness to the bottom too. The entire thing feels fairly realistic, but not really realistic to the fruit itself. I'd say it probably tastes more like the actual simple syrup and like canned mandarins. But it's good. It's a very nice, vibrant tangerine flavor. And I haven't noticed too many issues with fading too, which was a pretty big issue for most of the citruses that I've tried. So I think the tester of this went out about 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks, I didn't really notice a substantial kind of fall off. There are some more sort of subtle orange-like nuances here. I do pick up a little bit of like zest, which generally I sort of associate with like a heavier orange flavor. It's not much though, you know, and it's not super harsh, which a lot of the orange flavors end up being with all that zest in there. It also seems to have just a little bit of bitterness kind of offsetting all of that sort of sweet, syrupy, bright mandarin kind of flavor, kind of like the actual pith on an orange. But overall, yeah, I'd say it probably skews a little bit closer to a mandarin flavor. So I guess my biggest issue with using this as an orange flavor, it doesn't have much body to it. You know, it feels like it's pretty top note heavy, and while I do get some of that syrupy sweetness, it isn't particularly rich. You know, it doesn't really kind of stick to your palate. It's all kind of top notes that you sort of feel and then they're gone. So if you look at orange flavors, if they have any body, a lot of times it's very like warm and waxy. So I mean, ultimately this may be a better flavor because of it. If you look at like Flavor Arts Mandarin, that's actually a mandarin flavor with a good deal of body. But it, again, has that very heavy, warm, waxy kind of feel to that. And this really doesn't. And again, I know I've mentioned it, but this is surprisingly non-harsh for a bright citrus flavor. I'm not saying it's smooth, you know, but instead of being like a 7 or an 8 on harshness, it's probably like a 3 or a 4, which is definitely a good step. So in terms of where you want to use this, for me, I think it probably falls more into the accent flavor category. Just because I don't necessarily get a whole bunch of body from it. I'd use it for like a brighter mandarin, or even like if you tell somebody it's an orange in like a complicated mix, it's not like they're going to argue with you. But I'd use it as like that brighter mandarin accent at about 1.5%. I think you could go ahead and start cranking this up to like 3-4%. It doesn't get super harsh, but it does sort of feel very thin, you know, and so you only want to do that if you have something in the base of the flavor to kind of give it some body. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit unpleasant. But yeah, overall, probably one of my favorite like mandarin type flavors. Not sure if it's an orange though. Next, I have their passion fruit. This one didn't really click as much for me. I think it could be sort of construed as like a more artificial passion fruit flavor, but I feel like it doesn't really capture a lot of the things that you theoretically want out of a passion fruit. It's a very sort of syrupy red kind of guava-ish flavor. There is a little bit of tartness kind of counteracting that, and you get maybe a little bit of the peachiness, I guess, that shows up in passion fruit flavors. But in general, it's just kind of flat and heavy as opposed to like really bright and tart like you'd actually want a passion fruit. So I do get something that feels a lot like a peel note, which is weird because I don't really associate that with any kind of passion fruit. It has this kind of like green, muddled, sort of harsh finish to it, which kind of reminds me of like a bad mango peel note. And it's kind of bitter and perfumey, you know. I feel like it's probably gone a little bit far floral. It's a little weird, like you have that heavy syrupy texture, and then you get like some weird floral stuff, and so the entire flavor doesn't really like mesh into one clump. You got like that syrupy base here, and those high perfumey notes, and there's just nothing in the middle of that. Overall, too, I find it just a little bit harsh. It's not really a satisfying vape. I don't know. It's hard, you know, with passion fruit because there aren't a ton of great options out there. Perillum's actually probably my favorite, but all of them sort of have their own weird flaws. This isn't my silver bullet in terms of a passion fruit. If you were going to use this, I'd probably keep it relatively low, like maybe 0.5 to 1% on the upper end. It tends to get a little bit like harsh and muddy and floral above that. And you could probably sneak it into some tropical-ish fruit mixes. I don't know, those green notes for me don't work particularly well with any creams or anything like that. So like your pavlova, I guess, is probably out of the question. But if you did want to mix it with like a tartar fruit, like some pineapple or maybe one of the guavas, you know, one of the more realistic guavas, I think it could work there, but ultimately it's probably not one I'm going to be reaching for a lot. And next, because I've already said guava about 12 times, I have Flavor Express Guava. So if Flavor's Guava is like a more realistic take on it, and Capella's Sweet Guava is like guava nectar. This just tastes a lot more like Hawaiian Punch to me. You know, it has that very deep, heavy kind of red sweetness that you get with the OG Hawaiian Punch. The actual flavor itself, pretty strong, pretty saturated. Slightly syrupy guava flavor. I don't know. Guava to me kind of tastes like a combination between a candy watermelon and like a strawberry. It's a very sweet flavor. And this also kind of has like a syrupy, hard candy, kind of deep, flat texture to it. I do feel like there's maybe just a little bit of muskiness and a little bit of brightness and tartness that kind of keep it from just being way too flat. But in general, I'd say it's probably a heavier flavor. So again, I'm running into some slight harshness issues, especially sort of vaping this solo. Does seem just a little bit harsh to me. And it's definitely like a more candied, sweet take on guava, but it doesn't really feel like there's anything too chemical or off here. You know, that muskiness isn't overbearing. There's nothing weird and floral here. So I like this one quite a bit. I do think it'd be a good base for your traditional Hawaiian Punch kind of flavor, like that red guava sweetness. For me, at least, is what makes that Hawaiian Punch profile. I also think it'd be a good fit for like guava jam, which you actually see a good deal of. You know, it's that kind of heavy, syrupy, sort of very almost over sweetened guava flavor that you get in some like Mexican pastries and stuff like that. So I think this would be a good base for your guava jam. If you wanted to go like the fruit pairing route, works well with strawberries, really well with strawberries actually. Citrus work well there. Like fruitier stuff like pineapple and all that, like you can keep it vaguely tropical. But in general, if you've never tried a guava with a strawberry, you should definitely do that. And in terms of usage percentage, this actually works fine for me as a primary flavor. Like I said, it's a little bit heavy, a little bit sweet, but you could definitely accent around it and kind of use that sweet heaviness to your advantage. I think if you did just want to use this as an accent, though, I'd probably go around like 1% with it. But yeah, guava in general is one of those flavors like there's a whole lot of different takes on it out there, and unlike the passion fruit, I feel like each one kind of has their relative merits. So for this, I'd definitely be using this as sort of that heavy, syrupy, or even like bakery guava note. It's pretty good. And so that wraps up this batch of Flavor Express flavors. Again, big shout out to ECX for sending the Jungle Flavor stuff and the Flavor Express stuff to me. I do appreciate it. But yeah, I do hope that was helpful. We're going to be moving on to some TPA stuff next off of that stuff that they added to Bull City flavors. So should be interesting. Anyway, thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will catch you later.